My dead wife walked into the street that morning. At least, that's what my eyes told me, before my brain caught up. I was on my way to the lawyer's office, a stiff black folder resting on the passenger seat beside me, its contents too heavy for mere paper. My late wife Elena's estate. Probate, legal this, legal that. I'd already tuned most of it out. Widowhood numbs you in ways you can't prepare for. It eats your focus, your appetite, your sense of sequence. I'd stopped expecting clarity from mornings. But that morning, as I turned down Franklin Avenue, something cut through the haze. The woman came out of nowhere. She stumbled from between two parked cars, half limping, her coat flapping open like it didn't belong to her. I slammed the brakes hard. Tires screeched, coffee sloshed across my dashboard, and my chest hit the seatbelt with a sharp jolt. I opened the door, ready to scold, maybe even yell. Who blindly walks into traffic at 9:12 in the morning? Then I saw her face. She had Elena's eyes. No, more than that. She had Elena's face. I stared, breath locked in my throat. Not just the eyes, but the slope of the cheekbones, the exact angle of the jaw, the faint scar under her left brow. Even the way she blinked, slowly, as if waking up from a dream she didn't ask to be in. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice cracking with something I didn't recognize. Fear. Awe. She didn't answer right away. Her lips moved, barely. And then she whispered it, 5 words that I still hear when everything else goes silent. She wasn't supposed to die like that. I forgot the folder. I forgot the lawyer. I forgot how to breathe. I didn't touch her. God knows I wanted to. To grab her shoulders, shake her, demand answers. But something in her posture told me she'd crumble if I did. She turned away, and I stepped out fully, moving slowly, cautious like you would with a wounded animal. Her coat, someone else's by the look of it, hung crooked off one shoulder. Her shoes didn't match. One sneaker, one loafer. Her jeans were shredded at the knees and not in the fashionable way. This woman had been sleeping somewhere cold. "Wait," I said gently. "What did you just say?" She looked at me again, and for the briefest moment, her eyes sharpened. That was Elena's stare, too, that sudden shift from lost to laser-focused. It hit me like a punch to the ribs. "I didn't mean to scare you," she said. "I wasn't watching." "I'm sorry." "That's not what you said," I replied. "You said, she wasn't supposed to die like that." She flinched. Pulled her coat tighter. Looked past me like she expected someone to be watching. I shouldn't have said anything. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Do you know Elena?" I asked. "Elena Howard?" The name hit her like a slap. She stepped back, and I thought she might bolt. "Please," I said. "If you know something, anything." "She died in a crash a year ago. They said it was an accident." "Do you know something?" She didn't answer. But she didn't run. Instead, she reached into her coat and pulled out something that looked like it had spent months in the bottom of a grocery cart, a crumpled newspaper clipping. She handed it to me. It was from the Register Post. A short obituary. Elena Margaret Howard, 58. Devoted wife. Artist. Community volunteer. Survived by her husband. My name. Circled in red ink. "Where did you get this?" I asked, my voice raw. "Found it in the shelter," she said. "Last December." I didn't know she was gone until then. I studied her again. This time not just her face, her age. Her skin. The fine lines around her eyes, the gray at her roots. She wasn't Elena. She was older. And then something clicked. Something that shouldn't have made sense, but did. "Who are you?" I whispered. "My name is Josie," she said. Josie Madsen. I blinked. The name meant nothing. But the way she said it, quiet, sure, with a strange sort of pain, I knew it was about to mean everything. Elena was my sister, she added. And just like that, the world tilted sideways. We sat in a diner 3 blocks away. She ordered black coffee. I asked for 2 eggs, didn't touch them. I kept watching her. The way her hands trembled when she reached for the creamer. The way she flinched every time the front door swung open. I don't understand, I said. Elena didn't have a sister. She did, Josie replied. Me. Her half-sister. Same dad. Different moms. I stared. She never mentioned you. No, she said. She wouldn't have. He made sure of that. Who? Our father. And Charles Lamont. I almost dropped my fork. Charles Lamont. I repeated. Her lawyer. Josie nodded. He was more than that. He's the one who got me institutionalized. What? When I was 15. Said I was unstable. Dangerous. Really, I was just angry. And loud. And inconvenient. Her eyes burned. I didn't see Elena again after that. Until last year. When I saw that. She gestured to the obituary clipping between us. You were erased, I murmured. She nodded. Because I was a threat to their picture-perfect family. And now? I think her estate was stolen, she said. I think Lamont buried me again. But not this time. We sat in silence for a while. The diner hummed around us, clinks of forks, hiss of the griddle, distant radio static. I watched her hands. She looked like hell. But she didn't flinch anymore. Come with me, I said finally. Her head jerked up. Where? I've got a guest house, I said. You need a place to stay. You believe me? I hesitated. Then nodded. I saw her in your face, I said. That's enough for now. Outside, the clouds were building. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled low and mean. The storm hadn't started yet. But it was coming. Josie didn't speak for most of the ride back to my place. She stared out the window, arms crossed tight over her chest, like she expected to be dragged out and dumped again. I didn't press. My head was still reeling from the resemblance. Not just in features, but in the way she held her silence like armor. Elena had done that, too. Quiet was her way of testing the ground before she stepped on it. I had a guest house behind the main house, just one room, small kitchenette, and a bathroom that hadn't seen use since the pandemic. I kept it tidy, mostly. Elena had used it as a studio before her accident. The idea of someone else staying there used to feel wrong. But not this time. Josie stepped inside slowly, scanning the room like she expected cameras. Her fingers trailed across the old work table, lingering over a paint-stained mason jar that had once held brushes. Elena lived here, she asked, her voice low. For a while, I said. This was her retreat. I haven't changed much. She nodded once, like that made sense. I didn't tell her how many nights I'd come out here alone, looking for traces of Elena in the dust, the light, the smell of oils that never quite left the air. I gave her space. Told her to rest. I brought her some food, soup, crackers, fruit, and left the folder of old magazines Elena had hoarded, in case she needed a distraction. But I couldn't sleep that night. Not with what she'd said. She wasn't supposed to die like that. It echoed in my mind like a skipped record. The next morning, she was sitting on the porch when I came by, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug that had once said #OneArtist. The handle was cracked. Elena had glued it back twice. You said Elena was your sister, I said, sitting beside her. Start there. Josie didn't blink. Half-sister. Same father. Different mothers. She never mentioned you. I'm not surprised. She was raised to believe I was a mistake. Her voice was steady, but there was history behind it, heavy, unspoken weight. I waited. My mother was his first wife. Brief, chaotic. He was a well-connected man. Real estate. Legacy family. She was a bartender with a record. I was born 2 years before Elena. He tried to keep us both at first. But I was inconvenient. She looked out across the lawn, jaw clenched. When I turned 15, they put me away. Put you away? A private psychiatric center. Off the books. All hush-hush. They said I had behavioral issues. Defiance. Promiscuity. But really, I just fought back. I asked questions. I talked too much. I felt something twist in my gut. Elena was only 13. She didn't know what was happening. They told her I'd gone away. That I was troubled. I don't blame her. She was too young. Josie pulled something from her coat pocket, a laminated hospital bracelet, faded nearly white with age. I could just make out the name, Madsen, Josie A. I got out when I was 18, she said. No money. No contact. No family. I spent years drifting. Homeless shelters, jobs under the table. But I never stopped thinking about her. She looked at me then. Hard. Measured. I found her once. Years ago. I watched her speak at a community art fair in South Bend. She had on this long blue scarf. She was smiling. She didn't see me. And I couldn't. I didn't know how to walk up to her. So I didn't. She sighed. Last year, I saw the obituary. Found it in the bottom of a donation bin at a shelter in Newark. I saw her name. Saw yours. I knew it was her. I recognized that smile in the picture. She paused. Her hand trembled slightly as she ran a finger around the rim of the mug. I went looking. For her grave. For the estate. And that's when I learned about Charles Lamont. Now there was a name I knew. Too well. He's the executor, I said. Yeah, she replied. And according to him, Elena had no siblings. No surviving family except you. And somehow, the will leaves everything to a foundation that doesn't do what Elena wanted it to do. I frowned. How do you know what she wanted? Because she called me. That stopped me cold. She found me 5 months before the crash, Josie said. Tracked me down through a volunteer group I'd joined. She left a voicemail. Said she wanted to meet. Said she finally knew the truth. I stared. What truth? That we were sisters. That our father lied to both of us. My throat went dry. Did you meet? She shook her head. We set a date. It never happened. 2 weeks later, she died. I sat back, head spinning. The crash had happened during one of Elena's late-night drives. She used to go clear her head that way. I'd never questioned it. The official report said driver error. Wet roads. No foul play suspected. But now I wasn't so sure. She was going to change the will, Josie said quietly. I know it. She was going to fix it. But she never got the chance. I thought of the meeting I'd scheduled for that morning with Charles. He'd seemed oddly eager to finalize the estate. Too smooth. Too careful. Why now? I asked. Why come forward? Because I have nothing left to lose, she said. And because if Elena died trying to make this right, I owe it to her to finish it. I watched her for a long moment. Then I nodded. I have a meeting with Lamont tomorrow. I want to see how he reacts when I bring up the idea of long-lost family. Be careful, Josie said. Oh, I will, I replied. But we're not going to ask for answers. She raised an eyebrow. We're going to watch how hard he works to lie. Charles Lamont looked like he'd been cast out of a legal drama. Polished, pressed, and precise. His suit was a shade of navy that screamed, custom, his tie knotted in some intricate lawyer-Y configuration I couldn't name, and his smile, that damn smile, was just wide enough to imply warmth without risking sincerity. Richard, he said, rising from behind a glass-topped desk. I appreciate you coming in. I shook his hand. Dry palms, firm grip. The kind of man who calculates even his handshakes. I assume you've looked through the latest copy of the will, he asked, gesturing for me to sit. I nodded, pretending I had. It was in my briefcase, unopened. I hadn't needed to. Not yet. I appreciate you expediting the process, I said. This hasn't been easy. Charles folded his hands. Of course. Elena was a remarkable woman. It's been difficult for all of us. That all of us stuck in my throat. I wondered which version of Elena he remembered, the real one, or the one that had been convenient for his narrative. He kept using past tense as if it were armor. You said we're ready to finalize? I asked, watching his eyes. Yes, he said smoothly. Elena's final will was remarkably clear. Everything was to be transferred to the Elena Howard Family Foundation. As executor, I've already initiated the necessary paperwork. All that's left is your signature to release the remaining personal effects. And the foundation, I asked casually, is it still funding those community art programs she loved? He blinked. Some restructuring occurred, naturally. New priorities. Broader reach. I leaned back in my chair. She didn't mention any of that to me. He gave a sympathetic shrug. End-of-life decisions are often made quietly. You know Elena, she liked to avoid conflict. I nearly laughed. The Elena I knew didn't avoid conflict, she walked into it head-on if she thought someone was being wronged. But I kept my face still. And you're sure this is the most recent version? I asked. Absolutely, he said. Updated just a week before her accident. Witnessed and notarized. All proper channels followed. A week before her accident. She'd been calling Josie then. Funny, I said, she didn't tell me she was revising anything. Charles's smile flickered, just a hair. Then returned. Emotional distance in grief can cloud memory, Richard. I've seen it many times. I nodded slowly. Did Elena ever talk to you about her family? Her extended family? He cocked his head. No. Elena was an only child. Her parents passed long ago, I believe. No siblings. He said it so smoothly, so effortlessly, that I almost doubted what I knew. Almost. Interesting, I said, pulling out my notepad. I've been thinking of honoring her legacy with a family outreach, just to see if any old connections might be revitalized. Charles's smile tightened. I'd advise against that, he said. For Elena's memory. Stirring old ghosts rarely brings peace. But sometimes, I said, they bring the truth. Silence stretched between us, taut and uncomfortable. Charles shifted in his chair, just enough for me to notice. He opened a drawer and passed me a sleek pen. Shall we proceed? He asked. I didn't touch the pen. Instead, I opened my briefcase, pulled out the unopened will, and placed it gently on the desk between us. I'd like another day or two to read through this again, I said. His smile finally cracked. Not by much, but enough. Of course, he said. But the sooner we wrap this up, the sooner we can begin putting Elena's memory to work. Cleanly. Without delays. That word, cleanly, hung in the air like the scent of bleach. I stood. "Thanks, Charles. I'll be in touch soon." As I turned to leave, he added, "Richard, some things are best left in the past. Not all wounds need reopening." I paused at the door. Looked him in the eye. "Maybe," I said. "But if they never healed right, they weren't closed. Just covered." When I got back to the house, Josie was on the porch again, this time with her hair pulled back, face scrubbed, and one of Elena's old shawls wrapped around her shoulders. The resemblance was worse in daylight. Better. Both. I wasn't sure. "Well?" she asked. I sat beside her, exhaled slowly. "He lied," I said. "I figured." Flat out said Elena was an only child. And he pushed hard, really hard, to close this thing quick. He's hiding something. I just don't know what yet. "Then we find out," she said. I watched her jaw tighten. It was the same way Elena looked when she was planning something, from a dinner party to a protest. "I think I know where to start," I said. "County records. Public archives. If what you're saying is true, about the institutionalization, about the father, it's all got to be somewhere. Birth certificates. Guardianship filings. Court orders." Josie nodded. "I've tried. Most of it's sealed." "Maybe," I said. "But some seals can be pried open." I paused. "There's something else." "What?" He said Elena updated her will a week before she died. Josie's eyes narrowed. "That's when she called me. I don't think it was her will. At least, not one she meant to leave behind." Josie's fingers tightened on the mug. "You think he forged it?" "I think he buried her voice before she was even in the ground." For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The wind rustled the trees. A crow shrieked somewhere in the distance. "You're sure you want to do this?" she asked. I looked at her, this mirror image of the woman I'd loved for 30 years. Tired. Determined. Grieving in her own quiet way. "I buried one lie already," I said. "I won't let another one walk away free." Josie moved into the guest house like she'd been holding her breath her whole life and had finally exhaled. She kept to herself mostly, slept during the day, wandered the yard at night like a ghost trying to remember what being alive felt like. Every now and then, I'd catch her standing under the oak Elena planted 30 years ago, one hand resting against the bark, her head tilted like she was listening to something deep inside it. I let her be. We both needed space. Me, to think. Her, to recover. I spent that week digging. Birth certificates first. The Public Records Office was tucked behind the courthouse downtown, the kind of place that still smelled like cigarette smoke and ink toner. The clerk was a man in his 70s with liver spots on his hands and a voice that rattled like a faulty fan belt. "I need access to 2 birth records," I told him, sliding a slip of paper across the desk. "Elena Margaret Howard and Josie N. Madsen. Same father. Different mothers." He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "Relation? Widower to one. Potential beneficiary to the other." He made a sound like he didn't care, but still turned and shuffled into the back room. It took him 30 minutes. I was halfway through my second bad cup of coffee when he returned. "You're in luck," he said, laying 2 manila folders on the counter. I opened Elena's first. Born 1964. Mother, Claire R. Howard. Father, Franklin J. Howard. I opened Josie's. Born 1962. Mother, Evelyn A. Madsen. Father, Franklin J. Howard. 2 years older. Same father. Different mothers. I stood there a moment, staring at the paper, the official seal stamped clean and legal on the bottom right corner. No denying it now. Josie wasn't just telling the truth. She was proof of a truth someone had buried. The old clerk leaned forward, tapping the second folder. You might want to check this. Inside Josie's file was a document I hadn't asked for, a handwritten note from a state hospital, dated 1977. Request for ward of the state transfer. Patient, Josie A. Madsen. Reason, behavioral instability. Signed by Guardian of Record, Charles Lamont. My blood ran cold. That wasn't just unethical. That was planned. Back home, I found Josie cleaning out the guest house closet. She'd lined up a row of paint jars Elena had left behind. Most were dried out, but she was picking through the ones still salvageable, like a woman trying to rebuild a world from fragments. I handed her the birth certificate. Then the hospital transfer. She didn't speak for a long time. Just held the papers in her lap, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. He filed that transfer, she whispered. He had legal authority over you, I said. Which means your father gave it to him. She looked up, eyes sharp. My father died in 1978. That means he signed guardianship over before I turned 16. I nodded. He knew. He wanted you gone. The air between us thickened. I never had a chance, she said. They made sure of it. But it's all still here, I said. On paper. And paper holds up in court. She looked at me like she wasn't sure if I was naive or just stubborn. Elena didn't know any of this, she said. Not back then. She was 13. By the time she might have questioned anything, I was already erased. Not anymore, I said. Not after this. Josie set the papers down, then said something that made my skin crawl. There's more. What do you mean? I remember a court petition, she said. I overheard it, once, in that place. Lamont came to visit. I heard him talking to the director. Something about sealing the records permanently. It was a deal. A legal motion. Said he had a judge in his pocket. I felt a low pulse of nausea. You're sure? She nodded. Then we find that petition. It took 3 more days and a friend I still had at the courthouse, Marcy, a former paralegal who owed me a favor from back when Elena helped her kid get into art school. I met her in the back stairwell during her break. You didn't hear this from me, she said, handing me a printout. It was a copy of a sealed court petition. Filed June 12, 1980. Petitioner, Charles Lamont. Respondent, State of Indiana Health Services. Purpose, permanent sealing of medical and familial records pertaining to minor Josie A. Madsen. Cited reason, privacy, safety, and reputational protection for the Howard family. Judge, Wendell Ackers. The signature at the bottom was fresh and black even in photocopy. It stared up at me like a final nail in a coffin that had been shut before Josie ever had a chance to speak. I read it again. Reputational protection. They weren't even pretending. They sealed her away like rot in a wall. Out of sight, out of mind. And Charles Lamont had been at the center of it all. When I got back home, Josie was in the kitchen making tea. I handed her the petition. She read it without a word. Then she folded it slowly, set it down, and said, I want to see him. You will, I promised. But not yet. Not until we're ready. She nodded. Then poured 2 cups of tea. We sat in silence. But not the kind you avoid. The kind you sharpen. The email came at midnight. No subject line. No sender name. Just a single sentence. You're not wrong. Check the will dates. She never signed that version. Attached was a low-resolution scan, a corner of a legal document bearing Elena's name, the familiar swoop of her E, but with a date I hadn't seen before, March 3, 2023. Her accident was on March 10. I stared at the screen in the dark. The silence around me felt loaded, like even the walls were holding their breath. I clicked reply and typed one word. Who? No response. Josie was waiting on the porch the next morning, coffee untouched, eyes sunken but alert. I handed her the printout. She stared at the date, and something shifted behind her face. Not shock, confirmation. She told me she was rewriting the will, Josie said quietly. Said she didn't trust the foundation anymore. Said Charles was pushing her to sign something she hadn't even read through. I frowned. What foundation is this, exactly? The Elena Howard Family Foundation, she said. Supposed to fund community arts. But it's a shell now. No real activity. I looked it up. The website still has Elena's mission statement, but all the donations go through some third-party processor. No breakdown. No public tax records. That clicked hard. Elena had hated anything that wasn't transparent, especially when money was involved. I need to know more, I said. I'll start digging through the foundation's financials. But someone's already watching this. That email came from inside. Josie's brow furrowed. You think someone in his office? Maybe. Or someone who worked there. It didn't take long to find her. 2 days later, I got a call from a blocked number. A woman's voice. Nervous, hushed, like she was calling from the back of a closet. I used to be Charles's paralegal, she said. I saw everything. And I kept copies. I didn't ask how she got my number. Maybe she'd found it through court records or legal listings. Maybe she'd followed the same trail Josie and I were on. He forged the last will, she said. The real one, the one your wife signed, named you as executor. Left the majority of the estate to a domestic abuse shelter. My chest tightened. Not the foundation. No, she said. She was pulling out. Said the board had become too political. That they were shifting priorities away from real work. That Charles had turned it into a PR tool. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. The tile was cool under my fingers. Familiar. Real. Unlike what I was hearing. She told me to shred the earlier draft, the woman continued. I didn't. I couldn't. It didn't feel right. When she died, Charles locked the files. Called it client confidentiality. But he already had a forged version ready. Predated. Witnessed by 2 of his old college friends. Do you have copies? I asked. I do, she said. I've been sitting on them for months. But I didn't know what to do. Now I do. Meet me. A pause. Then, tomorrow. 7 p.m. Parking lot behind St. Vincent's. Come alone. She hung up. Josie sat across from me at the table, running her fingers over a faded photo, Elena at age 20, covered in paint, barefoot in a patch of grass, smiling like the world hadn't betrayed her yet. She was going to give it all to the shelter, Josie said. That's what she told me on the phone. Why? Josie looked up. Because we both came from it. Our mother, my mother, lived in one. When I was a baby. It saved her life. She never told me. She wasn't ready, Josie said. Maybe she thought she had time. The silence stretched. Then she asked, if we can prove the will is fake, what happens? We burn Charles Lamont to the ground. The woman, her name was Marissa, showed up at 7:06 p.m., wearing a hoodie and sunglasses despite the setting sun. She looked tired. Not worn down tired. Tired like she hadn't been able to breathe easy in a year. She handed me a flash drive. 3 documents, she said. The original will. The forged one. And a PDF of a scanned memo Charles typed to himself, outlining the process of removing Josie's name from any public record inquiries. I blinked. He typed that. He always talked to himself in writing, she said. Thought no one else would see it. Thought he was smarter than everyone else. And you? I was just scared, she said. But I'm done being scared. I nodded. You're doing the right thing. She laughed, not joyfully, but bitterly. No. I'm doing the thing I should have done months ago. Then she turned and walked away. Back home, Josie and I sat side by side on the couch, the glow of my laptop washing both our faces in blue light. We scrolled through the documents. Line by line. The real will was dated March 3, executor, Richard Howard. Beneficiaries, 80% to the Willow Haven Shelter for Domestic Survivors. 10% to the local arts collective. 10% to be split among personal friends and surviving family. Josie's name was listed. The forged version, dated February 25, named the foundation as sole beneficiary. No mention of Josie. No mention of the shelter. The memo, oh, that memo, was the nail in the coffin. Elena remains unstable final directives. Will secure revised copy with clean witnesses. Josie Madsen must remain non-existent. Reputation management essential. Trust funds can be rerouted post-execution. Josie read it 3 times, then stood up and walked outside. I followed. She didn't speak for a long time. Just looked out at the trees, the fading light. Finally, she said, he didn't just erase me. I waited. He erased her. I'd always hated the kind of bars Charles Lamont loved. Low lighting, high ceilings, expensive wood everywhere. Pretentious names like Stave and Barrel or the Velvet Pour. Places where every drink came in a glass that required its own tutorial and every man pretended he wasn't just there to be admired. But I knew Charles would say yes to the meeting. He wouldn't be able to resist the appearance of control, or the illusion that I was still blind. I made the reservation under his name. Made sure the table was near the back wall, just close enough to the music to seem casual, just far enough to let a microphone pick up everything. He arrived 5 minutes late. Polished. Of course. Richard, he said, smoothing his coat as he Saturday, glad to see you've come around. I smiled like I hadn't rehearsed it in the mirror. I've been thinking about Josie. That made him pause. Barely. A microsecond flicker of muscle near his jaw. I went on. She's staying at my place now. Been helping with some of Elena's things. Says she doesn't want anything from the estate, but I was thinking we could add her to the will. As a gesture. Charles leaned back, his smile professional. I don't recommend that, he said. Why not? She's unstable, Richard. There's a reason Elena never brought her into the fold. We all have skeletons in the family closet, but hers, well, she came with a psych file. I watched him carefully. You know that for a fact. He took a sip of his scotch. I know what needed to be done to protect Elena. To protect her legacy. And that required erasing Josie. There. A crack in the armor. Charles set his glass down. What do you think happens when someone with a documented history of institutionalization shows up during a contested will? Public scrutiny. Delays. The whole estate tied up in court for years. That's not what Elena wanted. And what about what Josie wanted? She wanted relevance, Charles said, then smirked. Let's be honest. She's lucky she's not in a facility right now. You housing her is charitable. But she's not family. Not legally. I leaned forward. You're wrong. Am I? I let a beat pass. I think Elena meant to change the will. His smile vanished completely. I added, and I think someone else made sure she didn't. Charles's eyes hardened. Careful, Richard. No need, I said, my voice calm. I'm just a grieving husband trying to do the right thing. He drained his glass and motioned for the check. Then let's keep it that way. As he stood, I added, you ever wonder what Elena would say if she knew what you did? He froze, just for a second. I sleep just fine, he said. And walked out. I slipped the recorder from my pocket and pressed stop. The audio was clean. Every word, every condescending syllable, captured. I emailed a copy to myself, to Josie, and to a trusted lawyer friend who owed me more than a few favors. I also sent it, anonymously, to a local reporter with a reputation for gutting lawyers like Trout. I got back home to find Josie painting. She had Elena's old easel out on the porch, a canvas propped up like an open wound, colors bold and angry and electric. No structure. Just emotion. I let her finish the stroke she was working on before I said anything. I met with him. She set the brush down. Let me guess. He said I was insane. I nodded. Among other things. She looked away, jaw tight. That's his favorite narrative. Well, I said, pulling out my phone, here's his new one. I played the audio. Josie stood still, listening. When it ended, she exhaled slowly. Then she looked at me, not with gratitude, but with something sharper. Resolve. Now what? She asked. Now, I said, we file a motion to contest the will. She blinked. Won't that tip him off? Exactly, I said. He thinks we're playing chess. But we're not. I smiled. No. We're rigging the table. The next day, we met with my lawyer friend, Ana Reyes. She was smart, blunt, and had once sued a city contractor so thoroughly he moved out of state. After listening to our story, seeing the documents, and hearing the audio, she leaned back and nodded. You've got a case, she said. Forgery. Malpractice. Fraud. And possibly obstruction. I nodded. Can you handle it? I can win it, she said. We filed the motion within 24 hours. A formal contestation of the existing will, citing suspicion of undue influence, forgery, and failure to disclose familial relations. It sent a legal tremor straight to Charles's door. And just like that, the war began. Charles responded exactly how I knew he would. Publicly dismissive. Privately panicked. He issued a statement calling the claims disturbing and unfounded, and accused Josie of being a mentally unstable woman exploiting grief for personal gain. The smear campaign had started. But he didn't know who he was dealing with. Josie wasn't a broken girl anymore. She was a witness. And I wasn't some gullible widower with a pen in hand. I was her proof. And together, we were done playing clean. The courthouse smelled like bleach and desperation. Josie stood next to me, her back straight, hands trembling only slightly at her sides. She wore a navy blouse and a gray blazer, one of Elena's. It fit her like it was made for her, like maybe it had been, once, a lifetime ago. Her hair was pinned back, her face clean, clear-eyed. The transformation was staggering. No one looking at her would have guessed that 3 weeks ago she'd been mistaken for just another woman on the street. No one could ignore her now. Charles arrived 15 minutes late. His expression froze when he saw her, not shock, not panic, but something else. Recognition. And fear. He'd buried Josie once. But this time, she'd brought a shovel of her own. The hearing was supposed to be procedural, a simple review of our motion to contest the will. A judge would look over the documents and determine whether we had enough to open a formal inquiry. No big statements. No press. No fanfare. But then Josie walked in. And the courtroom changed. Even before anyone knew who she was, they noticed. The way the bailiff straightened. The way the clerk stopped mid-sentence. The resemblance to Elena was uncanny, Even the judge, Honorable Frances Delgado, glanced up 3 times during the opening arguments, her brows furrowing tighter with each glance. Anna stood to address the court. We are here to request a formal inquiry into the validity of the most recent will submitted by Charles Lamont, citing evidence of forgery, conflict of interest, and the willful erasure of a familial heir. The judge looked to Charles. Mr. Lamont, do you wish to respond? He stood, all polished confidence and crisp diction. This is a tragic case of confusion, Your Honor, he said. The individual claiming to be Josie Madsen has no legal documentation linking her to Elena Howard. The deceased had no surviving siblings. These claims are manufactured and meant to delay the execution of a clear and valid will. Anna didn't blink. We have DNA results, Your Honor, showing a 99.9% half-sibling match between Ms. Madsen and the deceased. We also have sealed court records. I move to exclude any sealed documents pending further review, Charles interjected. Judge Delgado raised a hand. Mr. Lamont, let her finish. Anna continued. We also have an audio recording in which Mr. Lamont refers to my client as mentally unstable and suggests her death wouldn't change much to the outcome of the will's execution. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Charles's jaw clenched. That was taken without my knowledge. Yet not denied, Anna shot back. Judge Delgado leaned forward. Let's not turn this into theater. Do you have a witness? Anna nodded. We do. Your Honor, I would like to present Ms. Josie Madsen for brief identification and testimony. Gasps fluttered through the room as Josie rose. She walked to the stand with quiet grace. Every step was a reclamation. The judge looked down. Do you swear to tell the truth? I do, Josie said, voice steady. Please state your name and relationship to the deceased. Josie and Madsen. I am Elena Howard's half-sister. Same father. The judge studied her face. You look like her. Josie nodded. I've been told that my whole life. Then I wasn't allowed to anymore. Anna stepped closer. Ms. Madsen, can you briefly explain your history? Josie took a breath. I was institutionalized at 15 under a legal transfer filed by Charles Lamont. I was never declared incompetent. Just, removed. From that point on, my name disappeared from all public documentation relating to the Howard family. I was erased. And you recently discovered that my sister died. And that her estate had been redirected to a foundation she was actively trying to separate from. She had contacted me before her death. She was rewriting her will. Anna handed the judge a printed copy of the DNA results. We submit this proof of identity and genetic relation. Furthermore, we assert that the current will was forged by Mr. Lamont with the intent of preserving control of the Foundation's funds that have since been traced to shell charities and inactive organizations. Charles stood. This is absurd. Judge Delgado raised an eyebrow. Is it? He faltered. Anna turned to the judge. Your Honor, we request a formal stay on any further action regarding the estate and ask that a court-appointed investigator review the authenticity of the documents provided by Mr. Lamont. The judge looked from Josie to Charles, then back to the files in front of her. This court finds that sufficient cause has been presented to halt execution of the contested will and initiate a formal inquiry into its validity. Motion granted. A slow, stunned silence followed. Charles stared at Josie like he was seeing her for the first time. But she didn't blink. She just stood, steady, unshaken, as if this courtroom, this battle, was the home she'd been denied for decades. Outside the courthouse, reporters were already circling. Word had leaked. Cameras clicked. Questions flew. I wrapped an arm around Josie's shoulders and pulled her toward the car. One voice broke through the noise. Ms. Madsen, is it true you were in a psychiatric institution? Josie stopped. Turned. And faced the camera head-on. Yes, she said. I was institutionalized because powerful men found me inconvenient. But I survived. And now I'm here to reclaim what they tried to take, my name, my history, and my sister's truth. The camera shutters went wild. I opened the passenger door. She slid in without another word. We drove off in silence, the courthouse shrinking in the rearview mirror. But for the first time, Josie wasn't in the shadows anymore. She was on the record. She was real. And Charles Lamont was bleeding credibility by the second. Charles Lamont had built his empire on whispers and clean suits. But now people were whispering about him. And nothing about him felt clean anymore. It started 3 days after the court hearing. A local blog, the People's Ledger, posted an audio file titled Executor or Exploiter. The clip was just over 4 minutes long, but it was enough. His voice. Clear. Smug. Ugly. She's unstable, Richard. Her death in the streets wouldn't change much. The article beneath it was blistering. A detailed exposé, linking Charles to a network of inactive shell charities, all loosely connected to the Elena Howard Foundation. All bleeding money into phantom programs. All conveniently housed under LLCs that shared office space with Lamont Legal Consulting. Josie and I listened to it on the kitchen laptop in stunned silence. Her hands trembled on the edge of the table as the article detailed how $740,000 of Elena's legacy donations had gone to a group that claimed to fund art therapy, but had no public classes, no staff, and no students. Just a P.O. box. In New Jersey. Under the name C.L. Strategies Incorporated. The same initials as Charles Lamont. This is it, Josie whispered. This is how he did it. He built a funnel, I said. Used Elena's name to fund his own empire. That night, it spread like fire. First Twitter, then Reddit, then the local news. By morning, Charles's name was on every headline that mattered. Attorney under fire for alleged will forgery, fraudulent foundation spending. Widow's sister re-emerges in stunning courtroom twist. Elena Howard's final wishes betrayed. He tried to issue a statement. It only made things worse. He blamed Josie again, called her a mentally unwell squatter with a fabricated story. He blamed me, a grieving husband manipulated by opportunists. He even blamed the judge, questioning Delgado's impartiality. But no one bought it. Not this time. Because now, Josie had a face. A voice. And a DNA test. And Charles had a paper trail. The Bar Association launched an inquiry within 48 hours. They issued a formal ethics complaint, citing suspected misconduct, fiduciary breach, and conflict of interest. I received a call from a former client of Charles, a woman who said she trusted him with her brother's estate. He told us the will had no charitable beneficiaries, she said. But my brother volunteered for hospice. He told me he was leaving them everything. Now I think it was taken. She agreed to testify. We sent her statement to Anna, who was already assembling a stack of evidence for the civil suit we'd filed alongside the motion to contest the will. Fraud, malpractice, and defamation. It was all on the table now. Especially defamation. Josie had been painted as everything Charles needed her to be, unhinged, fabricated, erased. Now, she was none of those things. She was Elena's sister. A legal heir. And the missing witness to Charles's downfall. One morning, Josie stood in front of the mirror in the guest house, holding one of Elena's old scarves. Her hair was up. Her eyes were tired but fierce. He's still going to fight, she said. He's not the kind who admits defeat. I nodded. We won't give him the option. She looked at herself for a long time. Then she asked, what happens if the judge rules in our favor? Then Elena's real will goes into effect. The foundation is stripped of its power. The shelter gets its money. You're legally recognized. And if he settles? Then we bleed him anyway, I said. In court. In the press. In every corner where his reputation used to live. She smiled at that, a bitter, earned smile. Good. Later that afternoon, Anna called. You're not going to believe this, she said. Try me. He's trying to delay the civil suit. Filed a motion to claim he's being harassed by internet mobs. Wants a gag order. Did the judge bite? She laughed. Denied it immediately. Good. There's more. IRS just opened an investigation into his charities. I paused. You tipped them. Anonymous package, she said innocently. I laughed. God, I love lawyers. Anna snorted. Only the dangerous ones. That night, Josie and I sat out on the porch again, watching the news as the reporters laid it out in cold, legal detail. Charles had gone from respected estate attorney to disgraced fraud in under a week. His clients were pulling out. 2 partners had resigned from his firm. His office had been vandalized, thief spray-painted across the windows. But still, he hadn't cracked. Not fully. Not yet. He'll go nuclear before he goes down, I muttered. Josie looked at me. Then we better be ready to push the button first. I turned to her. Are you sure you want to do this? The trial, the press, the depositions, it won't be easy. She didn't hesitate. He took everything from me. From her. But not anymore. She stood. I'm taking it all back. The courthouse was louder this time. Reporters outside. Cameras. Protesters. Some had signs with Elena's name scrawled across them in bright red letters. Others held up photos from her charity events, art galleries, shelter fundraisers, youth workshops, the real Elena, not the paper version Charles had tried to hijack. Josie stood in the middle of it all, calm. Centered. Her posture quiet but powerful. We'd made it. 9 months of digging, filing, fighting. And now, it was Judgment Day. Charles arrived with 2 lawyers flanking him. He looked smaller than usual. Less polished. His tie crooked. Eyes ringed with shadows that even his tailored suit couldn't mask. The man who once orchestrated silence now walked into a courtroom braced for noise. Ana Reyes was already waiting inside. She gave us a nod as we took our seats. Ready? She asked Josie. Josie didn't look at her. Just said, I was born ready. They just never let me speak. The civil case against Charles Lamont unfolded over 4 days. 4 days of witness testimony, bank records, emails, court documents, DNA results, and sealed petitions unsealed for the first time in over 40 years. Every lie was lined up in neat little folders and dropped into the courtroom like timed explosives. We presented the real will. The one dated March 3rd, with Elena's signature and the name of the domestic abuse shelter she'd chosen. We showed the forged version Charles had submitted, dated February 25th, complete with 2 witnesses, who conveniently couldn't recall signing anything. Then came the foundation audit. A forensic accountant took the stand and explained, in dry, devastating detail, how Charles funneled more than $1 million through his network of dummy charities. None of it reached the people Elena had cared about. Some of it had been spent on private retreats, executive expenses, and payments to offshore accounts. Anna dropped the memo on day 3. Charles's private notes. The one that read, Josie Madsen must remain non-existent. The courtroom went silent as the judge read it aloud. Even Charles's own lawyers stared at him like they'd just realized who they were defending. But the final blow didn't come from a document. It came from Josie. Anna stood. Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to call Josie Madsen to the stand. Josie walked up slowly. Saturday. Adjusted the microphone like she'd done this 100 times before. Anna asked her to state her name and background. Then she stepped back and let Josie speak freely. I was 15 when I was sent away, she began. Not for violence. Not for illness. But because I was inconvenient. Because I asked too many questions. Because I reminded my father of a part of his life he wanted to pretend never existed. Her voice didn't waver. They said I was unstable. But the truth is, they were afraid I'd take up space. That I'd be visible. And when I finally got out, no one came for me. Not until Elena. She found me. She wanted to make things right. We were going to meet. Josie paused, eyes misting, but she kept going. She died before we had the chance. And everything she built, everything she loved, was hijacked by a man who never respected her voice, her mission, or her grief. Her eyes met Charles's. Locked on him. You erased me once. But I'm still here. I have a name. I have blood. And now, I have the law. Anna turned to the judge. We rest our case. Charles didn't testify. His lawyers knew better. They tried to paint Josie as vindictive, me as naive, the will as confusing and miscommunicated. But the damage was done. The evidence was too clear. The forgery too blatant. The audio recording too damning. On the fourth afternoon, the judge returned with a ruling. She looked at Josie first. This court recognizes you as the legal half-sibling and rightful heir of Elena Howard. Your claim is substantiated by both genetic evidence and documentation previously concealed through fraudulent means. Then she looked at Charles. This court finds you guilty of legal malpractice, willful misrepresentation, and the deliberate falsification of estate documents. Your license to practice law is hereby revoked. Gasps. Murmurs. Charles blinked rapidly, lips twitching as if trying to form a rebuttal that wouldn't come. The estate will be restructured according to the original will, the judge continued. The Elena Howard Foundation will be dissolved, its assets liquidated, and funds redirected to the intended beneficiary, Willow Haven Shelter for Domestic Survivors. She turned once more to Josie. And Ms. Madsen, the court commends your courage. The gavel dropped. It was done. Outside, the cameras exploded. Anna fielded the questions. Josie and I stood off to the side, quiet. Watching the media turn their attention elsewhere. What now? She asked. You tell me. She thought for a moment. I want to visit the shelter. I want to see where it's going. What Elena dreamed of. I nodded. And after that? Josie smiled faintly. I think I'd like to paint again. Later that evening, a news alert lit up my phone. Breaking, disbarred attorney Charles Lamont under federal investigation. It wasn't over. Not for him. But for us? For the first time in decades, it was starting to feel like it might be. The house was quieter now. Not empty, just lighter. The legal documents were gone from the coffee table. The tense whispers that once haunted the hallway had faded. Even the air smelled different, more like paint and coffee, less like grief. Josie had moved into the main house last week. She brought her canvases with her. Bright ones. Bold, sharp strokes that reminded me of Elena's early work, but with more edge, more pain and triumph woven together. Her art didn't ask for permission. It declared itself. Much like Josie. She was still finding her footing, but it wasn't tentative anymore. She didn't ask before using the stove. She didn't flinch when the mail arrived. She didn't avoid mirrors. The DNA test gave her proof. The court gave her power. But what changed her the most, was being believed. I want the shelter to have a name, she said one morning over toast. Whose name? Elena's. And mine. She looked at me, not for approval, just solidarity. I nodded. Elena and Josie house, I said. She smiled. Exactly. It opened 5 months later in a renovated community center on the edge of town. The former gymnasium had been converted into a space with bedrooms, shared kitchens, therapy rooms, a small library, and, at Josie's insistence, a full art studio. The first mural was hers. It covered one entire wall near the front entrance. A portrait of 2 women, painted in wild color, one older, grounded, her hand reaching out, the other younger, looking up, hopeful, scared, determined. Their palms met in the middle. Below it, the words. They tried to erase us. We became the wall instead. People came in waves. Former shelter residents. Elena's former students. Journalists. Donors. Skeptics turned supporters. Survivors who didn't know they were allowed to speak until Josie's story proved it was possible. The shelter filled within 3 weeks. But it never felt overcrowded. It felt necessary. Real. Charles Lamont didn't attend. But he made headlines again. Federal charges were filed 2 months after the civil suit ended. Wire fraud. Tax evasion. Obstruction. They raided his office. Then his home. They froze his accounts and suspended every legal contract tied to his old firm. He tried to play the martyr. Claimed it was a conspiracy. Blamed me. Blamed Josie. But he'd lost the only thing that ever shielded him, his reputation. Now, he was just another rich man stripped bare by truth. His trial was scheduled for next spring. We wouldn't attend. There were better things to build. Elena's grave sat on the east side of St. Augustine's Cemetery, beneath a wide oak that dropped acorns like confessions. I hadn't been back in almost a year. Not since before all of this began. This time, I didn't come alone. Josie knelt first, placing a sunflower against the headstone. Not a bouquet. Just one. Bold and unashamed. Then she stood back, giving me space. I crouched down slowly. Ran my fingers over her name. Elena Margaret Howard. 1964 to 2023. I'm sorry it took so long, I whispered. I thought honoring your memory meant following instructions. Letting it go. Letting him win. I shook my head. But then I met her. And I saw you again. The breeze picked up. Leaves rustled overhead. I imagined Elena standing behind me, barefoot in a paint-stained smock, arms crossed, smirking the way she did when she knew she was right. I couldn't save you, I said. A beat. But I gave her back her name. And I ruined the man who stole it. Josie stepped forward. She didn't cry. Neither did I. We didn't have to. The silence held everything. After a while, she spoke. Thank you. I looked up. For what? For letting me be real again. That night, we sat on the porch, 2 cups of tea between us, the sky wide and soft above. The world hadn't changed. But we had. I reached into my coat and pulled out an envelope. What's this? Josie asked. Elena's final sketchbook, I said. Found it tucked in a box behind the guesthouse water heater. Must have been one of her last. I thought you should have it. Josie opened the flap gently, hands reverent. Inside was a thin, weathered journal. On the first page, scrawled in familiar ink, were 6 words. If I don't make it, fight. Josie smiled, tears finally spilling. But they weren't broken tears. They were the kind you earned.